The chimpanzee went on and on, complaining how gorillas were such a tax and crime problem. It went on and on. The chimpanzee's image then flickered off the screen when it was in mid-speech because Newton was sick and tired of its constant chatter. "Boy, do they rattle on," said Newton. He smiled and said, "When I'm done with their planet, all their bigoted racism will no longer exist. They will have a new enemy to hate." Suddenly, Newton looked confused, as if he didn't know what to do. Mason tried to steer Newton's idea of conquest away by saying, "Looks like they are going to be a dull planet to take over, doesn't it?" "Fascinating," said Callisto. "Each race of apes seems to hold a high amount of prejudice toward the other ape race." Jeff Long said, "After watching the cow chimps and orangutan movie, the racist of all of the chimpanzees, I think." You might have something there, Jeff," said Novikova. Newton stood up from his throne and said, "Well, I can cure their racism problem. When I'm done with them, they will think the gorilla is God's gift to ape kind." Newton then looked at Sergeant Storm, giving Storm a serious stare, and said, "Storm, prepare to fire photon torpedoes into their sea. That should show them that we mean business." Sergeant Storm crossed his arms and refused Newton's order. Anger filled Newton's face, and he said, "Oh, we're going to play cute, huh?" And Newton walked up to Storm and said, trying to be calm, "Fire the torpedoes. That is an order, Storm." Storm stared Newton directly in the eyes and shook his head slowly from side to side for no. Newton pulled back his fist to strike Storm, then said, fighting to control his fury, "Storm, me dear, please fire the photon torpedoes." Storm smiled and threw his chin at Newton for Newton to strike. Seeing the danger of Storm's protest caused Mason to leap from his station and say, "He doesn't have to." "Doesn't he?" asked Storm. "Doesn't he?" asked Newton. And he swung down and shattered Storm's jaw, knocking Storm out cold in his seat. Newton then pressed the button, firing the photon torpedoes down into the sea of the ape planet, and causing a huge gray-white cloud of water vapor to rise up out of the sea like it was the result of a super H-bomb blast. The apes, after being blinded by the flash that went with it, became knocked off their little hairy feet from the mighty shockwave that shattered windows in the Bay City's skyscrapers. Some buildings were cracked up from the shockwave as well. One gorilla flipped out when he saw the huge cloud spreading out over the horizon in the eastern sea, causing him to shoot his machine gun about him and killing his fellow ape soldiers. The ruler of the ape planet, known as King Henry the Ape, a real gorilla of an ape, got word of what Newton had done and declared war on Newton. Missiles began to rise up out of the ground, and rocket ships were also being monkeyed with to use their